Welcome to Love Story with Lisa, where I share romantic audio stories. Today, I'll tell you a new love story. Had increased several-fold. Thinking of this, I felt deeply guilty. Fortunately, the butler came along this time as well. He was still in good health, patting his chest confidently and saying he had accompanied the chairman to Tibet before, so there would be absolutely no problem. By the time we transferred to a vehicle and headed toward Tibet, it was already late at night, according to the plan. We stayed overnight at a hotel near Mount Namcha Barwa. When I lay down, my heart was still fluttering with excitement. In my previous life, I lived until 28, yet never once left my province, never once came to Tibet, a place said to be closest to heaven. I was so excited that I barely slept all night. My mind kept replaying the half-month itinerary the butler had mentioned. Just thinking about it made me giddy with anticipation. I messaged Ethan, telling him to be ready and wake up early tomorrow to watch the sunrise. The next morning, before the sky had fully brightened, I eagerly knocked on Ethan's door. He was already awake. When he saw me rush in, he looked a little nervous. Outside the balcony stretched the magnificent Himalayas. The sky had lightened, but the sun had not yet risen. The butler helped me prepare the camera, then stood to the side, watching Ethan and me wander around excitedly. He smiled and said to the bodyguard beside him, "Young people really are full of energy." Above the mountain range, a sea of clouds began to gather. To the east, the clouds slowly turned pink. Before long, the brilliant dawn emerged. "It's coming, we're about to see the golden summit." I excitedly tugged at Ethan's sleeve and shouted, "Look!" We held our breath for what felt like forever. Finally, the sun pierced through the mist. In that instant, no, in just a blink, the highest peak suddenly changed color. "Look, it's lit up." People behind us raised their binoculars. Nearby tourists were just as excited. Golden light spread across the vast land. Gradually, the entire mountain range was submerged in radiant gold. The snow-covered peaks sparkled, now shimmering with golden brilliance. Above, the sky overflowed with golden-red clouds. Golden and rose-colored light layered upon the snowy peaks, golden mountains upon white mountains. It felt like stepping into Penglai, a celestial realm. In that moment, a poem by Su Shi we once studied in class flashed through my mind. "Alas, life is but a fleeting instant. I envy the endless." Yangtze, riding the immortals across the sky, embracing the bright moon, longing for eternity. As Ethan finished reciting, I turned to look at him, and we both burst into laughter. "I've seen the sun illuminate the golden summit," I said. It was a popular joke phrase. The next second, I looked at Ethan seriously. He corrected me gently. "No, we saw the sun illuminate the golden summit together." They say that anyone who witnesses the golden summit will have good luck for an entire year. I refused to stop there, and continued the trendy line. Ethan tilted his head slightly. "But I think we won't just be lucky for 1 year, we'll be lucky for a lifetime." I saw that familiar little fong of his again. "Then, a lifetime of luck it is. Let's be lucky together for our whole lives." "Ethan, let's keep watching these magnificent, beautiful mountains together." I looked at him. The morning breeze lifted the strands of hair on his forehead. The golden light of the sunlit peaks fell straight into the eyes of the young man standing before me. Those familiar features suddenly felt astonishingly unfamiliar. Ethan Chin was beautiful. In my previous life, I had thought so as well. But the youthful softness and innocence of boyhood had quietly faded from his face. This time, when he returned, aside from exhaustion, there was a calm maturity, steady, restrained, almost indifferent. It was as if a nameless wind had blown in from nowhere overnight, brushing away the golden light that once lingered in his eyes. and scattering it across a wild, barren field, a field where the fire in my heart, once ignited, could never truly be extinguished. When the spring wind returns, even a single spark is enough to burn an entire distant plain. The butler gestured silently to the nearby bodyguards, signaling them to keep quiet, then discreetly pressed the shutter. For these 2 days, Ethan and I pretended not to notice the plainclothes guards at all, wandering freely, playing as if no one were watching. We had a Tibetan-style breakfast on Baker Street, eating as we watched pilgrims from afar, cameras in hand, recording the culture and customs of Tibet. Then, at my very insistent request, Ethan changed into traditional Tibetan clothing. The shop owner even tried to add hair accessories and makeup for him. Ethan nearly jumped in fright. The moment I raised my camera, he blushed, flustered, instinctively reaching out to block the lens. But it was too late. I had already taken the shot, holding the photo. I laughed and showed it to the butler. He turned back, pulled me along, picked out a Tibetan outfit in a similar color palette, and handed it to me, telling me to change. Then it was Ethan's turn to hold the camera. He squinted as he smiled, snapping photos of me. "Desk mate, you're really pretty. Truly beautiful. Don't cover your face. Come on, smile for the camera." The shop owner stroked his chin and asked, "Would the two of you like to take a couple's photo?" Ethan and I both turned our heads at the same time, equally unsure how to respond. The butler laughed, pulled the shop owner aside, and whispered something to him. Let them take a set of couple photos. Ethan's styling was finished very quickly. When he stepped in, the young woman who was doing my makeup handed me a pile of colorful ribbons and necklaces to choose from. I fumbled indecisively, unable to pick one. Ethan pointed to a bright yellow ribbon. "Choose yellow, she'll definitely look good in this." The woman held the yellow ribbon up against me. "That's true, your boyfriend has great aesthetic taste." "Of course," she continued cheerfully, "Lena looks amazing in yellow." Annoyed, I turned my head, only to see Ethan tilting his head, half his face hidden behind his sleeve, secretly laughing while the woman braided my hair. Ethan rested his chin in his hand, watching closely. When she finished one braid and prepared to start the other, Ethan suddenly interrupted. He raised his hand excitedly. "I know how to do it. Let me try." The woman laughed and made space for him. When she was braiding near me, I didn't feel much. But when Ethan took over, I unconsciously closed my legs together, straightened my back, a little tense. Ethan was over 180 centimeters tall. I was only 166. From a distance, it looked as if I were leaning into his chest. The sensation was both unfamiliar and strangely familiar. The faint scent of a young man, standing at the threshold between boyhood and adulthood, brushed against my most sensitive nerves. I could even clearly feel the warmth of Ethan's fingertips as they touched my hair, then lightly brushed against the edge of my ear. He braided very slowly, his movements slightly trembling. To ease the awkwardness, I deliberately spoke up. "Desk-mate Ethan, you really know how to braid hair, right? You're not using me as a test subject, are you?" "Of course I know how," he replied seriously. "It's not my first time." "Then who did you braid hair for the first time?" "I braided my cousin's Barbie doll." "If it's ugly, I'm hitting you." Ethan coughed softly as I checked the mirror. The woman came back in with jewelry, took one look at the remaining braid, and praised it with a smile. Ethan's face was full of smug pride. After that, he dragged me around in front of everyone, showing off his braiding skills, boasting endlessly about his craftsmanship. What could the Cheen family bodyguards say? Naturally, they applauded and praised their young master. "So beautiful. Really well done." Ethan was praised straight into the clouds. Passing tourists glanced at us for a few seconds. "Wow. That couple is so beautiful." Hearing that, Ethan lifted his chin proudly, grabbed my hand, and strolled down the street openly, confidently, through this foreign land. I could almost see an invisible tail wagging behind him. When it came time to take the couple photos, both of us were shy at first. Our hands and feet didn't know where to go. The photographer kept giving instructions. "Oh my God, don't be so nervous. Come closer. That pose is too stiff. Smile, but not like that. Don't force it." Ethan finally couldn't take it anymore. He reached out directly, pressed my head into his chest, tilted his head slightly, and looked at the photographer. "Like this," he said calmly. "Is this okay now?" I staggered and fell straight into his chest. The photographer pressed the shutter at that exact moment. As the flash went off, I heard a rapid, pounding heartbeat. The next day, we went horseback riding along the shores of Yamdrok Lake. On the third day, after finally adapting to the high plateau, we headed to the Potala Palace. I was panting heavily, gasping for breath. Ahead of us, the old butler, overflowing with energy, was already far in the lead. Behind us followed a coordinated line of bodyguards. It really had to be said, the physical stamina of elderly people was truly a mystery. "Slow down. Don't rush," the butler called out. "Don't stop to rest yet, or you'll get altitude sickness again later." Qin Ming extended his hand toward me. I took 2 deep breaths, then reached out and grabbed his hand. At last, we reached the summit of the Potala Palace. The magnificent palace, said to have been built for Princess Wensheng, stood towering into the sky, solemn, overwhelming. I had never truly been exposed to Tibetan culture before. Back then, I moved excitedly through the palace, eagerly looking around at everything. Suddenly, the bodyguards all turned their heads at the same time. With his keen hearing, Qin Ming instantly turned back as well, his expression shocked. Standing there, at some unknown moment, was a monk, an elderly Tibetan monk, his hair completely white, wearing a proper, earth-yellow kasaya robe, the kind seen in the most orthodox Buddhist paintings. Plain, humble, unadorned, unassuming. He lowered his head, palms pressed together before his chest. Inside the palace, the sound of chanting echoed steadily. The rich scent of incense drifted from afar. Out of nowhere, I felt something strange, as if he were looking at me from a distance. The monk stepped toward us, bowed in greeting, then gestured to the guards beside us to show he meant no harm. Lowering his head, his weathered face revealed deep compassion and clarity. Hands joined. The faint smoke of incense lingered, like doves bearing good news. "Last night, I cast a divination," he said softly. "Heaven's mandate told me that a familiar person would come here." Qin Ming frowned, clearly confused. "Master, do you have something you wish to teach us?" The monk remained slightly bowed. "Benefactor," he said, "please take one step aside so we may speak privately." As the monk turned to leave, he gave me a deep, lingering look. Qin Ming hesitated. Puzzled, facing the elderly monk, the monk slowly raised his head, calm and composed, and spoke unhurriedly. "Young Master Qin, this is the second time we have met." The sun had risen high, golden threads of light outside the Potala Palace, slowly wrapped around the Buddha statues. The Tibetan monks moved their lips in silent chants, yet on the young man's face before him, there was only confusion, a hollow blankness. "Master," Qin Ming said, "I have never met you before." The monk lowered his eyes, silent. "The first time we met, you were holding an urn of ashes, climbing thousands of steps without complaint. Traveling a long distance to come see me. Behind you then, there was also this older man following you." He pointed. The person he pointed to was the elderly butler, his sharp, hawk-like eyes still alert, watching the surroundings carefully. Qin Ming's eyes widened slightly. Master, I am certain this is my first time here. Although I have attended many funerals, unless it was for close family, I wouldn't have. Perhaps you met my father instead? The Tibetan monk listened quietly to the end. His eyes looked at Qin Ming like an ancient well, still, unfathomable, making it impossible not to believe him. Young Master Qin, we truly have met, but it was in this humble monk's dream. He continued calmly, it sounds hard to believe, but recently, every time I enter meditation at the hour of Z, I repeatedly dream the same dream. In that dream, you told me your name yourself. Before coming here, you spent considerable effort investigating. After this humble monk returned from pilgrimage, you personally came to the monastery, and correctly reported Qin Ming's full name and birth chart. Not a single detail wrong. You planted the cause. Now you are reaping the result. Even I have wondered why I dreamed of that scene, as though it had truly happened. But seeing you today, you look much younger than you did in the dream. Qin Ming unconsciously followed his words. In the dream, how old was I? About 27 or 28. Master, can you see the future? Are you saying that 10 years from now, someone close to me will pass away? The old monk shook his head. Cannot see through, cannot speak, cannot know. This humble monk has no intention of fortune-telling. Heaven's mandate is not for sale, nor does it offer methods to extend one's lifespan. I do not know whether that was the past or the future, but in the dream, you asked me about reincarnation, about good and evil, right and wrong, about how the Buddha judges them. You asked whether a killer would fall into the Avicii hell. You asked how much merit a living person must accumulate to atone for the sins of the dead, to beg forgiveness from the heavens. Qin Ming was stunned. In the dream, I wanted to pray for that person to ascend to heaven? The old monk smiled faintly, a rare complexity crossing his face. No, you said, you only wished for that person to have a next life. Who was that person? Cannot see through, cannot speak, the past cannot be retrieved, the future can still change. Though I do not know how the present stands, if today I have already met you, then it means the present is still changeable. But, young Master Qin, this humble monk must say, no matter how one looks at it, this is a dead game on the chessboard. It cannot be altered. This humble monk will stop here. There are other matters to attend to. I dare not trouble you further. The Tibetan monk finally pressed his palms together, gave Qin Ming a slight nod, then turned and left. Only then did Qin Ming want to call out to him, but the monk, his temples already white, moved swiftly. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared. The old butler and the others hurried over. All the monks in the hall pressed their palms together, signaling that the elder had instructed no one was to disturb them. I quietly crept closer, and tugged lightly at Qin Ming's sleeve. What did that monk say to you? Qin Ming looked as if his soul hadn't returned. When asked, he only shook his head, nothing strange. The old butler worriedly reached out, and touched Qin Ming's forehead. You weren't cursed by someone, were you? After that, the elderly butler hurriedly escorted us back to the hotel. He summoned more than 10 doctors to examine Ethan one by one, and even invited several lamas to check whether there was any spiritual disturbance. Fortunately, Ethan Qin was completely fine. Still, the old butler refused to relax. He ordered Ethan to stay in the hotel for a few more days and forbade him from going out until everything was fully confirmed. The next morning, I heard Ethan's voice complaining outside my door. I'm so bored, he pleaded with the butler endlessly, switching from soft coaxing to outright begging, even throwing in exaggerated sulking and childish antics. Every single trick failed, all mercilessly rejected by the cold-faced butler. Even through the wooden door, I could clearly imagine the scene, him rolling around and acting spoiled, just like before, when he would deliberately show his little dimpled canine tooth, hoping I'd let him copy my homework. Just thinking about it made me smile. I never imagined Ethan Sheen could have such an adorable side. After all, ever since we started attending supplemental classes, he hadn't copied my homework anymore. Seeing him act spoiled like this was ridiculously rare. While secretly listening and smiling to myself, I brushed my sketch paper and began mixing colors. Outside the glass window of my room stretched a range of snow-capped mountains. These past few days, whenever I went out, I felt refreshed and clear-headed, no longer plagued by the lingering nightmares. A few days earlier, I had been captivated by the sight of sunlight illuminating golden mountain peaks. When I finally set down my brush and stretched, a voice suddenly rang out. "Desk mate, is this the sunlight on Golden Mountains?" I jolted in shock, nearly falling off my chair. Ethan Sheen reacted instantly, reaching out to steady me. Once I enter a painting state, I tend to sink completely into it, forgetting everyone and everything around me. I hadn't even noticed when Ethan had pulled over a chair and sat beside me, resting his chin in his hand as he watched me paint. However long I painted, he stayed just as long, silent, patient, obediently sitting there without disturbing me in the slightest. I didn't even know when he had arrived. I stopped and nodded, yes. Ethan stared at me without blinking. After a moment, he suddenly said, "Desk mate. This time, you didn't cry." "Hold on," I protested. "Whoever said I have to cry after finishing a painting?" He suddenly reached out, as if wanting to touch the snowy mountain in the painting, but his hand stopped mid-air, hovering, never quite landing. "This painting is really beautiful," he said abruptly. "I like this one more." "It's not that the previous one wasn't beautiful," he hurriedly added. "That one was beautiful too. It's just this one feels brighter. The other one, the sky felt too gloomy, too heavy." I spoke before he could continue. Pointing at the painting, I asked, "You like it? Then once I finish it, I'll give it to you." Ethan's eyes lit up. "Really?" After that, he behaved like a child who had just received his favorite toy, carefully holding the painting, examining it from every angle. "I'll definitely hang it somewhere easy to see," he declared. "I'll hang it in my room." He made the decision immediately. "Right," he added, "desk mate, what's the name of this painting?" That question caught me off guard, seeing me fall silent, deep in thought, struggling to come up with a suitable name. Ethan studied my expression carefully, then tentatively suggested, "How about this? What do you think if we call it Dawn?" That works," I said after a moment. "But is there a reason?" "The moment when sunlight strikes the Golden Mountain peaks, it makes sense to call it dawn," he explained. "And besides, the golden light in this painting makes people feel full of hope. The past may be dark and impossible to reclaim, but the road ahead will be bright and radiant." I narrowed my eyes. "Wait a second, classmate Ethan. You didn't secretly read some tragic novel, did you?" Ethan coughed lightly, clearly trying to hide something. And also, this name fits your name too." "What do you mean?" "It's a blessing," he said earnestly. "A wish that the road ahead for us will always be bright and beautiful." Hold on. My name is Lena Lu. Yours is Ethan Sheen." "Ethan Sheen," someone from the back row shouted. "You heard people talking about the Dawn CP already, didn't you?" How could he say something like that without shame? But no one could actually argue with him. under the so-called group vote, which was really just his people anyway. Dawn was officially chosen as the title of Sunlight on Golden Mountains. After the painting was completed, Ethan carefully wrote 2 names on the back in neat handwriting, Lena Lu, Ethan Sheen. Then he framed it and stored it away. Before we left to bed, we hung prayer flags at the foot of the snowy mountains. Ethan had the bodyguards by a huge pile of flags. He led the way, dragging a long string of prayer flags as he ran forward, all the way to the highest point. After looking around for a while, he finally picked a spot. Satisfied, I finished hanging the prayer flags, pressed my palms together devoutly, and prayed. Desk mate, Ethan said, I've already talked to the local management. Our prayer flags will stay here for decades. They won't be taken down. Lena, he called, turning back. Look. I turned around and saw countless prayer flags fluttering wildly in the wind. Ethan Sheen stood among the flowing ribbons of 5 colored flags, standing high, gazing into the distance. The wind from the snowy peaks brushed past his eyebrows. The young man, with sword-like brows and clear, bright eyes, looked breathtaking. The locals say that every time the wind passes through the prayer flags, it is like chanting a scripture, like offering a prayer to the gods. That day, what did I pray for? I prayed for my parents' health and happiness, that they would be free from illness. I prayed for a peaceful life for myself, free from further uncertainty. And finally, I prayed that the gods would show mercy and forgive my past mistakes. That they would not let those mistakes affect the person Ethan Sheen loves in this lifetime. I prayed for him, for a peaceful and happy life. I made 3 wishes, 1 prayer flag. Carrying 3 wishes, desk mate, you really went all out with that, he said, laughing. Don't laugh at me. How many prayer flags did you buy? And how many wishes did you make? 1. What? How many flags did you hang? That many, and you only made 1 wish? Of course, Ethan said seriously. If you're going to wish, it has to be something big. I was even worried the gods might not notice. I only made 1 wish, and I only prayed once. Me too. I also only made 1 wish. After we returned home. During the remaining half-month, Ethan Sheen suddenly changed his plan for supplemental classes. He said he would help me review the science subjects. He spun the pen in his hand, pointed at a large problem, then lightly tapped my forehead. Desk mate, this is already the 3rd time you've made the same type of mistake on this kind of question. If I weren't here, this story would just end right here. In that instant, Ethan's smile faded. The cheerfulness that usually filled his eyes was suddenly replaced by sadness. My chest tightened painfully. I forced a smile and pushed the draft paper toward him, then. Teach me one more time, I said softly, for this question. How exactly do you draw the auxiliary line? Both Ethan and I deliberately avoided this topic. It was a wound we were powerless to treat. All we could do was let it fester on its own, like the blade of a guillotine hanging overhead, waiting to fall. Recently, Ethan had been receiving phone calls more and more frequently. These days, whether he was solving complex math problems or struggling with political questions where every answer seemed plausible, he would often be interrupted by a phone call. From a distance, it seemed Ethan was talking to his father. Every time, their conversation ended in an argument. When Ethan returned, he was always visibly angry. When I asked him about it, he would brush it off with a simple, "It's nothing," then pretend nothing had happened and continue explaining the lesson to me. I knew Ethan didn't want to go, and the closer the departure date drew, the more obvious his anxiety became. Why he didn't want to go? I didn't dare think too deeply about it, even though I also didn't want him to leave. All I could do was repeatedly work through difficult problems, using them to hide my own unease. I knew he would have to go, and I knew he absolutely had to go. I could only pray that day would come a little later. Until that afternoon, after we finished studying, Ethan suddenly stopped. He turned around and looked at me as I packed my school bag. The moment our eyes met, a bad feeling rose sharply in my chest. Ethan stared at me. The words seemed to catch in his throat. Several times he swallowed them back. "Lena Lo," he finally said, "I have to go." So that day had come after all. I gripped the strap of my bag tightly, smoothing out creases that didn't even exist. "So soon?" I asked. "The date's already confirmed?" He spoke with difficulty. "Yes. It's confirmed." "When?" "Tomorrow night. My father will send someone to pick me up." I looked up at him, feeling inexplicably wronged. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" He avoided my gaze. I couldn't say it. My father gave an ultimatum. His plane arrives tomorrow. I can't stay any longer. It was unbearable. It felt like a massive stone was pressing down on my chest, making it hard to breathe. Ethan Sheen was about to leave, and once he left, it would be at least 5 years. 5 years. Such a long time, long enough for everything to change. By then, would he still remember me? I honestly can't remember what expression I managed to hold on to that afternoon. I said, "That's okay," and added, "I won't make it to your birthday this year anyway." Then I remembered the painting, that painting, the one with the sun and the mountains. "I've finished it," I said. "Tomorrow, I'll bring it to you. You have to wait for me." Then I turned and ran. If I hadn't run, I think I would have cried. I had never imagined that I would have such a deep connection with Ethan Sheen in this lifetime. In the beginning, I only wanted to earn a little extra money by tutoring him. I had known all along that he would leave. I had known it from the very start. When Ethan's father sent a private plane to pick him up, they called it picking him up, but when I saw the tall, imposing bodyguards accompanying him, it felt more like he was being taken away. Ethan hugged the framed painting tightly. He looked at me seriously and repeated again and again, "Desk mate, I will definitely come back. Wait for me, you must wait for me." Choking back tears, I said, "I'll wait for you, you have to come back." Before turning to leave, he secretly stuffed a bank card and a phone into my hands. Ethan Sheen left. He left. But life had to go on. School had to continue. Time passed, and I entered 12th grade. The academic pressure skyrocketed overnight. The seat next to mine changed occupants again and again. Stacks of review outlines on my desk grew higher by the day. Under such overwhelming pressure, I gradually stopped thinking about Ethan Sheen. It wasn't that I didn't want to, I simply didn't have the time. 12th grade was exhausting to the point of collapse. The pressure was so intense that I hadn't drawn anything in a long, long time. Occasionally, I would lift my head from the mountain of books on my desk and wonder vaguely whether everything that had happened before was nothing more than a dream. The rumors about the Dawn CP were eventually washed away by the current of time. The subjects of gossip among classmates changed from one class to another. No one mentioned Ethan Sheen anymore. Now, what everyone talked about was the story between Dylan's son and Lucas Lynn. If it weren't for the obvious scowl on Lucas Lynn's face, I might have believed the rumor spreading so confidently among our classmates. "Why you don't come any closer. Stay away from me. I hate this," I said, dodging him and deliberately keeping a distance of nearly a meter. "Come on, Lena Lo, you don't seriously believe that nonsense, do you?" Lucas Lynn put on an exaggeratedly wounded expression. Look, when we were kids, you used to follow me around everywhere. Now that we're grown up, you don't even acknowledge your big brother anymore? I'm being serious. Go away. I need to talk to you properly. Lucas's expression finally turned solemn. Last time you mentioned it, so over the past few days I paid attention, he said quietly. I found that Dylan's son secretly hid 2 of Nina Sue's paintings. His tone grew more serious. There's been a lot of art homework lately. Nina probably hasn't realized the paintings are missing yet, but in the 2 most recent evaluations, I looked carefully at the works Dylan submitted. They were clearly Nina's earlier assignments. The teachers hid the graded paintings all the way at the bottom. I had to flip through them secretly to see. I understood immediately. Dylan's son's father had been connected with the teachers for a long time. I patted Lucas on the shoulder. Classmate Lynn. We need to think of a solution. Lucas rubbed his chin, sinking into thought. I already warned Nina, but with my current abilities, I'm still not strong enough to confront Dylan directly. There's no concrete evidence either. All we can do is prepare in advance. And wait for fate. He told me not to worry, he would think of a way. That night, it rained heavily. I was doing homework at home when suddenly I heard a loud bang from outside my room. A sense of dread surged through me. I rushed out, and saw my mother collapsed on the floor. Beside her, a cup had fallen over, water spilling everywhere. I slammed on the door. Pounding it hard, shouting for help, the neighbors upstairs and downstairs were startled awake by the noise. Angry at first, they rushed out, then froze when they saw me sobbing uncontrollably and my mother lying unconscious on the floor, the door still wide open. Several adults quickly gathered to help lift my mother. The neighbors hurried to look for a car to take her to the hospital, but the moment we stepped outside, the storm was torrential. The old residential area sat low. Floodwater had risen to our calves. The entrance to the underground garage was completely submerged. Old Zhang's and old Wang's cars. Go check over there. Finding a car to save her is the most important thing. I clutched my mother tightly, crying, staring out into the pounding rain. Thunder roared through the night. The rain tonight was terrifyingly heavy. My dad, Mr. Lo, had gone on a business trip just a few days ago. Why did everything go wrong today of all days? Call 120. Call an ambulance. It's raining too hard, the garage gate won't open. That white car up ahead, looks like it belongs to Building 3. Does anyone know the owner? Contact them. It's parked on higher ground. Quick, quick. I'm calling 120 already. The hospital says to wait, they'll come as soon as they can. With rain this heavy, it's hard for them to get here. I heard Mrs. Le has a heart condition. She has to get to the hospital immediately. Is there a doctor in this neighborhood? Traffic's jammed, we can't move. The crowd was panicked and chaotic. No one stood up to take command. The person who should have been giving orders should have been me, my mother's daughter, but at that moment, all I could do was stare at my mother's pale face, the floodwater spreading before my eyes, and the blurry figures of neighbors desperately trying to force open the garage gate. Something rolled down my cheek and fell to the ground with a soft pat. I didn't know whether it was rainwater or tears. At that moment, the difference meant nothing. Lena Lo. This is the second time. The second time. The second time. Do you want to stand by again and watch your mother die right in front of you? Even though I was shaking uncontrollably, I clenched my teeth and pinched myself hard to stay conscious. My lips trembled as I held my mother tightly. I turned to Aunt Six, the neighbor with the loudest voice. "Andy, please tell Uncle Wong and his wife to find the owner of that white car and ask for help. Tell Uncle Lee and the others to stop trying to open the garage gate. Go to the community clinic and get a stretcher. If we really can't find a car, we'll have to carry her there ourselves, quickly." Aunt Six looked at me, startled, then nodded, "All right. That's the only way now. Old Wong, you go first." Suddenly, the sharp roar of an engine cut through the rain. A black car sped toward us through the storm. It stopped right in front of us, a sleek, beautifully contoured supercar. "Thank goodness, there's a car. Driver. Driver. Please help, someone needs to go to the hospital. Driver, please, help us." The car window rolled down. When I saw the face inside, I completely forgot how to speak. It was Ethan Sheen. His bangs were soaked through, rainwater dripping down. His eyes were red as he stared straight at me. I didn't even have time to call his name, together with everyone else. We hurriedly lifted my mother into the car. I climbed in after her. After a brief discussion, the neighboring uncle and aunt volunteered to come with us. "Lena, you're still just a child. You can't handle this alone. The rest of you go back. We'll take care of things." I lowered my head, wiping the rain from my mother's face, while Ethan drove in front. At that moment, there was no time to ask him why he had come back, no time to ask why he appeared so suddenly, no time to even wonder whether he was old enough to drive. But what was strange, Ethan Sheen didn't drive like a novice at all. His steering and accelerator were perfectly coordinated, smooth and precise. Like a seasoned driver, the car sped through the rain, fast and powerful, like a black panther tearing through the stormy night. Calm, decisive, unshakably strong. At that moment, my mind went completely blank. My mother had already been rushed into the emergency room. On the other side of the corridor, Ethan Sheen was on the phone. I caught fragments of his words: mobilizing people, dispatching doctors, urging them to get here as fast as possible. When he ended the call, I quickly pulled my gaze away, pretending I hadn't heard anything. He walked toward me. Ethan was wearing a black shirt, his hair slightly disheveled. We hadn't seen each other for 3 months, yet he seemed like an entirely different person now, far calmer, far more composed. For a fleeting moment, I thought I saw the shadow of a future CEO in him, wrapped in a high-end black suit, elegant to the point of quiet seduction. The only thing that didn't quite match was his face, still young, still carrying traces of boyishness that hadn't fully caught up with that aura. He seemed a little taller. Standing in front of me, he lowered his head to look at me. "Lena. Thank God. We made it in time." The corners of his eyes were red, as if he had just been crying. He looked at me like that, his lips curving slightly, almost a smile. "But not quite. It's not too late," he said softly. "It's still in time." Across the ocean, a violent storm was assaulting an ancient castle. The room was unlit. After a flash of lightning, everything was illuminated as if it were daytime. Ethan, dressed entirely in black, stood silently, staring at the painting on the wall. Outside, thunder rolled heavily across the sky. Dark clouds surged in, stripping the world of light in an instant. In the blink of an eye, dusk was swallowed whole by night. The painting was titled "Moon Over the Sea." The deep blue strokes of the ocean emitted a strange glow. When lightning struck, the painting shimmered, glittering brilliantly. Finally, Ethan opened his eyes. They were eyes utterly mismatched with his youthful appearance, eyes that had weathered countless storms, eyes tempered by wind and frost. My mother pulled through the critical stage. I hurriedly called Mr. Lowe so he could finally rest easy. But Ethan looked at me, visibly startled. "Your father?" he asked. "Your father is still alive?" "Of course he is," I frowned. "You're saying strange things today." "The nurse told us that once my mother stabilized, we would be allowed to visit her. For now, we were told to go home, rest, and come back the next day." When Ethan drove me home, it felt like he had so much he wanted to say. But when he met my questioning gaze, he swallowed everything back into silence. In the end, he only muttered one sentence at the corner of his lips: "As long as she's alive, as long as she's alive, that's enough." This time, Ethan's return was truly strange. The next day, my father came to the hospital as well. He spoke with the doctor about my mother's condition, then sat beside her bed, letting out a long sigh. "Her heart condition has relapsed again." The doctor said she would need to remain hospitalized for observation. No one knew why it had suddenly flared up again. The situation wasn't optimistic. They recommended a heart transplant. My vision darkened. How? How could this happen? I had come back once already. I didn't study fine arts anymore. I didn't ruin my exams. My father never went to see Victor's son and got pushed to his death. My father didn't die. So why had my mother's heart disease still relapsed? I asked the most important question immediately. "How much money do we need?" "It could be more than 300,000, the doctor said, "and at the moment, there's no suitable donor heart available." My father gently patted my head. "You just focus on your studies. Don't worry about these things. I'll find a way. If there's really no other option, we'll sell the house and borrow money everywhere. It should be enough." In that moment, my father suddenly looked much older. It felt like I had returned to that same year, the year I borrowed money everywhere to save my mother. I couldn't escape it. I still couldn't escape it. 300,000. How could that ever be enough? Every single day, the cost of medication and hospital fees was staggering. After surgery, there would be another massive expense just for recovery. The old house in the neighborhood where we lived, selling it wouldn't bring much at all. Selling paintings? Dylan's son's rise to fame came from a competition held once every 5 years. The most recent one had just ended. The next wouldn't be until next year, but my mother couldn't wait until next year. Without prestigious awards, no one would buy my paintings. An unknown modern artist's work was no different from a piece of blank canvas. I walked home in a daze. I couldn't just sit there and wait for death. Absolutely not. Butterfly effect? What a joke. I had already come back once. Was I really supposed to watch the tragedy replay itself right before my eyes? The next day, I asked for leave from school and ran away to a construction site, the fastest way to make money. I begged the foreman, telling him my mother urgently needed surgery. He ignored the fact that I was underage and agreed to pay me the same wages as an adult. I needed money. I desperately needed money. I even felt like I was about to step onto the path of crime, all for money. From that day on, my mind was consumed with one thought: how to make money, fast. Again and again, I tested the boundaries of the law. I was losing my mind. But I had no other choice. I was terrified beyond words. Studying, the college entrance exam, none of that mattered to me anymore. I could make money, but my mother's illness was a bottomless pit. Who would keep lending me money endlessly? What if my mother, unwilling to burden us, decided to give up on living? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I had only worked half a morning when someone dragged me outside. Ethan Sheen stood across from me, dressed neatly in a tailored suit. I, on the other hand, was filthy, covered in dust. He looked furious, but he tried to restrain himself, forcing his voice to stay gentle. Go back, Lena. Go back to school. Study properly. Prepare for the college entrance exam. That's what you should be doing right now. At that moment, I was strangely calm. I'm not going back. Lena, Ethan, I cut him off. I'll still have chances to retake the exam in the future. But I only have one mother. I shouted at him, my family is my absolute line. Don't cross it. I don't need a future anymore. I don't need college either. I just want my parents to live well. College entrance exams? Studying? What do those even matter? None of that matters, I screamed through my tears. I only need my mother. I cried uncontrollably, trying to wipe my face with my hands. My hands were filthy, caked with dust and grime, but Ethan Sheen grabbed my wrist tightly. With his other hand, he gently wiped away my tears. His voice was calm, too calm. Go home, he said, go back to school. Study properly. Your mother's situation, I'll handle it. I'll find a donor heart for her. You don't need to worry about anything. I wanted to say something like I can't accept this, or you can't just use your parents' money like that. But before I could say a single word, Ethan suddenly pulled me into his arms. He held me tightly, as if he wanted to merge me into his body. I felt warmth against my neck. Something wet dripped down. They were tears. Ethan was crying. Ethan Sheen was crying. I had never seen him cry like this. So painfully. So desperately. His voice trembled as he spoke, choking on his words. My desk mate. This time. You must get into college. You absolutely cannot fail again. Dylan Sunday or Victor Sunday, no one can swap your exam papers anymore. No one can steal what belongs to you again. This time. No one will be able to take it away. My hand, which had been about to wipe my eyes, froze in midair. My heart turned cold. Everything inside me stopped, as if time itself had solidified into one enormous exclamation mark. Ethan Sheen had come back. The Ethan Sheen from my previous life had returned as well. Even after 8 lifetimes, Lena Look could never have imagined this. After she had set fire to the fiancé of CEO Sheen, after she had taken her own life. He did not hate her enough to scatter her ashes. Instead, without saying a word, he kept them. He crossed half the globe, traveling thousands of miles, carrying her urn in his arms, climbing countless stone steps, until he finally met a revered monk in Tibet. Ethan Sheen donated vast sums to charity, helping the poor and the suffering. He spent enormous amounts restoring temples and monasteries, accumulating immeasurable merit. All he asked for was one thing, a next life for her. More than 10 years earlier, from the window of his art studio, he had once glimpsed the silhouette of a young girl. In his memory, only her back remained, along with the breathtaking scenery in a painting. Years later, when he pointed to that painting and asked the artist, Dylan's son, about it, Dylan shyly admitted in silence, the woman in the painting is beautiful. The painting is beautiful too. From that moment on, the young man began a fierce, obsessive pursuit. Years later, Dylan's son debuted as a celebrated painter, instantly becoming a sensation. When Ethan's mother bought that painting, he saw a familiar figure emerge from the canvas. That was when Moon Over the Sea was born. The painting bewitched him completely, as if some invisible force compelled him to kneel unconsciously before it. He fell hopelessly in love with the talent and the beauty of its creator. Love came suddenly, violently. Even his proposal was impulsive, almost reckless. Since childhood, the strict demands of Richard Chien and the suffocating constraints of the Chien family had restrained him. But once his wings were strong enough, he could no longer wait to escape that gilded cage. Reuniting with Dylan's son gave him the perfect excuse to reject the marriage his father had arranged. As the wedding date approached, he stood before Moon Over the Sea countless times, staring at it again and again. He couldn't understand why he couldn't emotionally connect the painting with Dylan's son, yet he still loved it. Deep down, he never truly expected to marry Dylan's son in a wedding dress. What he enjoyed most was seeing his father furious and powerless. He thought marrying Dylan's son wasn't such a bad idea. It was like marrying all of her paintings along with her. A famous artist's reputation would benefit the Chien group anyway. What was wrong with that? As for love and marriage, if they could live together, then live. If not, then divorce. What was the big deal? Ethan Chien never imagined that before the wedding, an accident would happen. The bride died. The news exploded across society. Social media nearly collapsed for days. A raging fire finally burned away the fake painted skin. The real author was revealed. A stunning reversal. A 10-year-long identity swap, a tragic, deadly ending filled with regret. So it was you. So the one who created this masterpiece was you. But by the time truth and justice arrived, it was already too late. Under Moon Over the Sea, on that rainy night, Ethan Chien opened his eyes. Memories of 2 lifetimes intertwined. He collapsed inside the ancient castle, burning with fever for 3 days straight. The moment he woke up, he crossed the sea and rushed back to his homeland. He could not abandon Lena Lu, his desk mate. The girl who had suffered misfortune in the very year he left in his previous life. Her exam papers were swapped. She failed the fine arts entrance exam. Her father died. Her mother followed. Within half a year, Lena Lee's life spiraled into a swamp she never escaped. He would never allow her to go through that again. Because from what he later learned, in the 10 years after Lena's parents passed away, she spent every last bit of her savings trying to save her mother, only to fail. After her mother died, she wandered homeless. She lived under bridges. She was scammed out of rent money. She fled from loan sharks. It was as if she had lost all hope of living. She took grueling labor jobs for pitiful wages. She suffered a workplace accident on an assembly line. She received a meager compensation, then was fired once she could no longer do heavy work. She drifted through the streets, surviving by collecting trash with an elderly scavenger woman. She collapsed from heatstroke in the streets. During the most beautiful years of a young woman's life, Lena Lu had lived in misery and despair for years. It was as if she no longer wanted to live well at all. Meanwhile, the person who had stolen her life was living in the spotlight. Dylan's son, arrogant and self-satisfied, rose to become the star student at the most prestigious fine arts academy. She basked in applause and bouquets, adored by everyone around her. Her university years passed effortlessly, like a delicate flower grown inside a greenhouse, protected, pampered, admired. Her parents loved and spoiled her. She never had to worry, never had to endure wind or rain. How could the world be so unfair? At that time, Ethan Chien frowned as he flipped through the documents in his hands. Only then did he finally understand why Lena Lu had been able to create a painting so saturated with despair and agony. Moon Over the Sea. In her 5th year after everything fell apart, Lena accidentally ran into the admissions teacher from back then in a bar. The man was smugly boasting to a group of parents about his brilliant achievement of swapping exam papers. How it had completely changed a student's fate. Lena listened in secret. Her eyes burned red with rage. After the gathering ended, she grabbed a wine bottle and blocked the teacher's path. Once the truth of that year was fully exposed, Lena nearly went mad. When she regained consciousness, she was already inside a police station. The admissions teacher had his head smashed open by her. Terrified and guilt-ridden, he chose to settle the matter privately and fled. Lena sat awake all night, her eyes bloodshot with hatred. That was when she began planning her revenge. She applied to work as an assistant in an art studio, deliberately planning a reunion with Dylan Sunday. She painted works tailored precisely to the requirements of art competitions, intentionally letting Dylan see them. She pretended not to notice when Dylan plagiarized them, again and again. Step by step, she lifted Dylan's son onto a pedestal, until the ultimate masterpiece, Moon Over the Sea, was born. Ethan Sheen only learned much later that while he was dating Dylan's son, there had been a thin, fragile figure silently watching them from afar, again and again. At that time, what was Lena Lu thinking with those empty eyes? Was it doubt, seeing her former deskmate standing beside Dylan's son, or was it relief? Thinking that liberation was finally near, no one would ever know. She died, and with her death, all of those truths were buried forever. Ethan Sheen had never had much impression of Lena Lu. She had only been his deskmate for a few short weeks before transferring to the art class. At that age, his gaze had never once lingered on that quiet, timid girl. The eyes of a young man always chased the brightest scenery. He tried to recall her later, but the memories were faint. Lena Lu was the deskmate he had known for the shortest time. She wasn't pretty. She wasn't eye-catching. Her grades were average. She spoke little and barely interacted with him. The first time they met, when she faced his excessive teasing and the laughter echoing throughout the classroom, she merely blushed, clenched her pen, and endured the humiliation in silence. Lena Lu was painfully ordinary. There was nothing memorable about her. How could an arrogant young man ever notice someone like her? But the moment Ethan learned the whole truth, he was filled with fury. For Lena Lu, every trace of goodwill he had ever felt toward Dylan's son instantly plunged into the negative. He could not imagine that someone in this world could be so malicious, so foolish, and so despicable, capable of destroying another person's life while still feeling smug and shameless. He didn't care that he had once been engaged to Dylan's son, nor that he himself had been implicated and disgraced. He went to the morgue. There, he saw Lena Lee's body, so thin it was almost nothing but bones. He heard the forensic doctors quietly discussing that even if she hadn't taken her own life, with such a frail body, she wouldn't have lived much longer anyway. He asked himself what else he could still do for Lena Lu. The stirrings of youthful love in his heart should have belonged to her. Those paintings, that glory, those honors, they should have belonged to Lena Lu. Perhaps even the woman he truly wanted to propose to should have been Lena Lu. But the girl was already dead. She was both pitiful and terrifyingly intelligent. She had calculated her own death early on, without hesitation, swallowed poison and walked calmly toward the end. Aside from a grand funeral and a posthumous vindication by the Fine Arts Association, what else could he do for her? What could he possibly make up for? He prayed that she might have another life. He prayed that in her next life, she would never encounter a thief again. Time passed. One day, after work, CEO Sheen returned home. As he passed the painting Moon Over the Sea hanging in the hall, he suddenly stopped. He stood there for a long time. Outside, rain poured relentlessly. Thunder roared. Lightning split the sky. Trees bent violently under the storm. The weather was bleak. When he opened his eyes again, he stared around the castle in shock. This was the place where he had lived during his years studying abroad. Ethan Sheen hadn't returned here in many years. Two sets of memories overlapped violently in his mind. He collapsed to the floor. This is the next life I prayed for Lena Lu. In his previous life, he had been furious for her. He had empathized with everything she endured. In this life, he loved Lena Lu. He wanted her to be safe. He wanted her to be happy. Fame and glory no longer mattered. and fortunately. In this life, he arrived in time, everything was still in time. When Ethan Sheen and I returned to the hospital room, it was already filled with doctors in white coats. He had brought together top medical teams from both domestic and international institutions, specializing in cardiovascular surgery. Doctors and professors were discussing treatment plans intensely. I understood Ethan's intention. He wanted me to feel at ease, and so, just as he wished, I returned to school, but right now, my feelings toward him are incredibly complicated. I honestly don't know how I should treat him. He is not entirely the classmate Ethan I once knew. He is also Mr. Sheen, the Ethan Sheen of my previous life. The man who once had a fiancée who was killed by my hand. These past 2 days, I've been restless and uneasy. I don't know how to face Ethan Sheen, so I've been deliberately avoiding him. One day, after school, when I went to the hospital to visit my mother as usual, I unexpectedly saw Ethan Sheen already inside the room, talking to her. I hesitated for a moment, then still stepped inside. Mrs. Lee hurriedly called out to me. She was lying on the hospital bed, her complexion looking much better than before. She took my hand, then gently looked toward Ethan Sheen. Lena, these days, it's really all thanks to Ethan. When you're at school, he always comes by. You must thank him properly. I looked at Ethan Sheen. He was completely different from before he left. Many of his habits and his presence had grown strikingly similar to Mr. Sheen, the CEO. Looking at him made me feel unfamiliar. Even distant, awkwardly, I muttered a word of thanks, then quickly held my mother's hand and avoided his gaze. But he saw it. Ethan Sheen's eyes dimmed for a brief moment. He stayed silent, then suddenly stepped toward me. I instinctively stepped back. That reaction, of course, did not escape his notice. His lips pressed tightly together. He stopped about 1 meter away from me. Lena Lu, let's talk. I couldn't bring myself to avoid his gaze any longer. After hesitating for a moment, I nodded. Ethan Sheen walked into an empty hospital room, closed the door, then turned back and looked at me in silence. His gaze made me feel immense pressure. I opened my mouth, wanting to call his name, but when the words were about to leave my lips, facing the man before me, both familiar and unfamiliar, my voice faltered. CEO Sheen. Ethan Sheen's expression changed, and yet, I became even more resolute. At this moment, the two people standing face to face were no longer Lena Lu and Ethan Sheen at 17, but Lena Lu at 28, quiet and withdrawn from her previous life, and the newly appointed CEO of Vianhong Group. I was familiar with Ethan, my former classmate, but toward Mr. Sheen, I was a stranger, a complete stranger. Ethan Sheen let out a long breath, as if he had finally reached a compromise. Fine, he said softly. Then I'll speak to you in this identity. Lena Lu. I did not respond. Both of us carried memories from a previous life, two strangers who had barely interacted, who had left almost no impression on each other, now exchanging information face to face. Mr. Sheen briefly explained everything that had happened after my death, just as I had expected. The revenge plan had ended perfectly. I confessed to him that the moment I returned to life was only a few days before Ethan Sheen transferred schools. Mr. Sheen nodded in understanding, then smiled faintly. No wonder. I knew he was referring to the time I had hit him. Feeling a little embarrassed, I turned my head away. That was because you were talking way too offensively back then. Ethan Sheen smiled, putting on an apologetic expression. I'm sorry. Back then, I really was a mischievous brat. I hope you can understand and forgive me, Lena. But, my desk mate, he added lightly, that punch from you back then, did it also mix in resentment from your previous life toward me? What, were you planning to settle both old and new grudges together? When that familiar tone reached my ears, I froze. That was Ethan. But woven into his voice were traces of the adult Ethan Sheen's memories. For a moment, I couldn't tell who was standing in front of me. Only one thing was clear. He was no longer the boy who once lived in my heart. I didn't like him speaking to me in Ethan's tone. "Mr. Sheen," I said coldly, "I hold no resentment toward you from my previous life. I apologize for dragging you into my revenge against Dylan Sunday. That matter had nothing to do with you." Ethan Sheen looked momentarily lonely. He turned away and forced a smile, as expected. "In my previous life, I didn't remember you, and you didn't remember me either." I didn't want to reminisce about the past with him. I stepped forward 2 paces and looked straight into his eyes. "Mr. Sheen, when did you come back?" Ethan Sheen explained everything from beginning to end, moon in the sky. So it was that painting after all. I still didn't fully understand it. But there was one thing I finally understood. Where did Ethan go? I raised my head, refusing to back down, forcing him to face me. Word by word, I demanded, "Where did he go?" Ethan Sheen avoided my gaze, turned around, pulled over a chair, and sat down. His voice was calm, too calm. A naive boy who couldn't stand against his own father disappeared. Isn't that better? He couldn't even protect you, Lena. My pupils suddenly lost focus. When I came back to my senses, my hands were already around Ethan Sheen's neck. I had pinned him down, yet there was not the slightest expression on his face. "Give him back, give him back, give him back to me." It took me a long time to find my voice again, to realize that those screams were all coming from my own mouth. "Give him back, give him back, give him back." Ethan Sheen leaned back against the chair, raised his face to look at me. Those familiar eyes held emotions so complex. I couldn't understand them at all. "I now share all of his memories," he said quietly. "I am him. Everything that happened, I remember it all. I am Ethan Sheen." I shook my head in pain. "You're not him, you're not Ethan." I couldn't strike him, because he wore Ethan's face, because he looked at me with Ethan's eyes. "Why won't you accept it?" Ethan Sheen sighed, as if carrying a trace of regret. "If I hadn't arrived in time, I'm afraid your mother would have been in critical condition already. If it had been the Ethan Sheen from before, he wouldn't have met you again until 5 or 6 years later. By then, it would have been far too late." The Ethan Sheen back then was truly useless. Lena Lu. I grabbed his face and stared straight at him. "I have never thought that. Never. Whether it was Dylan's son switching exam papers and stealing my artwork, or my mother's heart condition, those were all my own matters. In my previous life, I took revenge with my own hands. I never once expected anyone else to take responsibility for my entire life. What you're saying now is unfair to Ethan. He didn't know anything. He already did the best he possibly could. I'm deeply grateful to you for driving my mother to the hospital, and I'm also thankful that you found the best doctors and medical resources for her. But you cannot erase his personality, use his body, and then speak such beautiful words. Ethan is the best. He is the only one. You are 2 people. 2 completely different people. Ethan is Ethan. He is no one else. Even if you inherited his memories from a parallel world, you still cannot become him. How could you possibly be the same? Ethan Sheen should not be CEO Sheen standing in front of me. Ethan Sheen should be the one sitting beside me, smiling at me with that slightly crooked grin. He should be the one standing silently behind me while I painted moon in the sky, then pulling me into his arms when I cried, comforting me gently like a huge, soft pillow. He should be the lone hero of a July night, rushing through the darkness just to see me. He should be the Tibetan boy, laughing brightly as he braided my hair. He should be the young man who hung prayer flags and colorful paper charms for me at the foot of the snow mountain. But he should absolutely not be the CEO Chin of my previous life, or from any parallel world. Even if you inherited his memories. I let go and leaned back against the chair, covering my face. Beside me was a familiar, warm body, yet the soul within it had already become a stranger. I felt ice cold, as if the person next to me were a corpse. I could only sob silently. The corpse reached out and gently stroked my head. His voice was low and mesmerizing. He loved you, and I will love you too. Don't be sad. Everything he could give you, I can give you as well. We are the same person, Lena Lu. I once climbed thousands of steps to the portal, seeking a high monk, begging for a next life for you. I found the wrong person back then. But we still have a chance. This time, the one who should marry me, is you. I suddenly shoved him away and hurriedly stood up from the chair, completely distancing myself. I looked at him and said firmly, "That's impossible. You will never be him. Mr. Chin, this is not love. This is guilt. And the thing I need the least in this world is other people's guilt. You've already done more than enough. You saved my mother, you are my benefactor. I will repay this debt, without fail. But there is no logic in this world that says, just because you chose the wrong person, I must marry you. There is no such reasoning. I don't need this kind of compensation. CEO Chin, please show some self-respect." I turned around to leave, then suddenly remembered something. I clenched my teeth and added one more sentence, and one more thing. I never once thought Ethan was useless. He was the most wonderful person I've ever met. He was brighter than any paint color I've ever seen. A little sun I could never recreate, no matter how brilliant the yellow. Before meeting him, I thought my entire life would be filled with gloomy, twisted colors. But Ethan barged into my life without warning, shattering the dark clouds ahead of me. He forcefully threw open the window, letting sunlight flood in. And while I was still standing there, stunned, he turned his back to the light and smiled at me. CEO Chin. Lena Lu, I've lived through 2 lifetimes, but my life has always been plain and unremarkable. That act of revenge was the only bold stroke, the darkest and most tragic one, in my entire existence. I slowly turned around, leaned against the door, and looked calmly at Ethan Chin. CEO Chin, you've also grown past that stage. So why must people deny their own past? You look down on him, you don't value the Ethan Chin of before. But the thing you despise is the most dazzling color I have ever seen in my life. Ethan Chin stared at me in shock. If the Ethan Chin from before truly no longer existed, that would be no different from hearing that Ethan Chin had suddenly died, something I could never accept, that radiant young man, in the end, being forced by me to be sealed away, becoming a memory that could never be seen again. Only reminisced about, like a distant, unreachable bright moon, the man standing in front of me might have the same face as Ethan Chin, but the feeling he gave me was no longer the person I once knew. He would never be Ethan. I had said too much. I didn't want to stay in this place for even one more second. The heavy emotions pressed against my chest, making it hard to breathe. Just as my hand touched the door handle, a powerful force suddenly pulled me back. I lost my balance and fell in panic into his arms. a pair of arms wrapped around my waist from behind. His chin rested on my shoulder. I heard a long, quiet sigh. Lena. He didn't call me deskmate, yet my eyes instantly burned with tears. This was Ethan, the classmate Ethan. I froze, wanting to turn around. I was too emotional. I heard Ethan Chin let out a soft shoo. Wait. This familiar feeling, again, it hit his chin again. Ethan Chin rubbed his chin, his voice carrying a hint of mischief. Hey, deskmate, could it be that you really like my chin that much? He looked at me with reddened eyes, staring deep into my gaze, yet he still couldn't hide the smile on his face. Last time you didn't hit hard enough, he said lightly. This time, are you planning to make up for it on the other side? The joy of finding back someone I had thought lost forever almost swept away my reason. But in the very next second, Ethan Chin suddenly became serious again. As if switching modes, he instantly slipped back into the mature, composed, and cold demeanor of CEO Chin. My expression changed at once, yet my sharp eyes didn't miss the trace of mischief still hidden in his gaze. Suddenly, I understood, and at that moment, my anger exploded. I lunged forward immediately. No, this time, I didn't punch him. I slammed my head straight into his chest. Ethan Chin fell backward into the chair, then completely lost control and burst into loud laughter, the entire room filled with his laughter. It sounded piercing to my ears, so irritating that I wanted to kick him. He kept laughing, until tears welled up at the corners of his eyes. Only after a long while did that hysterical laughter finally stop. At that moment, my expression must have looked terrifying. Laugh. Keep laughing. Laugh yourself to death right here. I shouldn't have shed a single tear over you just now. It would have been better if you'd coldly said you couldn't come back. Ethan Chin was still smiling, but he clearly realized I was furious. He immediately sat up, with his long arms, using his height and strength. He pulled me back toward him. He still couldn't completely stop laughing, half suppressing it while coaxing me. Hey, deskmate, are you really this bad at taking a joke? My face darkened. Finally, he became a bit more serious. He looked at me intently, even raising his hands in surrender. All right, I give up. I give up. I just saw that you've been gloomy and upset these past few days. I was really worried about your mental state. So I thought I'd tease you a little. I glared at him. Tease? You wanted to scare me to death. That's more like it. Unexpectedly, Ethan Chin suddenly put on a pitiful expression. He looked deeply wronged. I didn't expect you to hate the me from my previous life this much. I even thought we could continue our unfinished fate from the last life. I wanted to pinch him, but he hugged his chin and pretended to be weak, so I switched targets and pinched his ear instead. Stop being so narcissistic, will you? If Dylan's son hadn't wanted to marry you, who would have even remembered who you were? Oh right. Why did you want to marry Dylan's son in your previous life anyway? Moon in the sky, that painting was mine. I painted it. I did. If it weren't for me, you would have almost married a thief. Do you know that, Ethan? Tears suddenly welled up, catching Ethan Chin completely off guard. He hurriedly lowered his head and wiped my tears away. His voice softened instantly. No. Before I knew the truth, I already didn't like her much. After I knew, I only felt regret for you. In my heart, how could she ever compare to you? Deskmate. I remember now. When I first recovered my memories, I was secretly happy. I thought everything could be redone. I didn't expect that you also carried memories from your previous life. I was even wondering why things in this life were so different from before. Lena Lu. I've always been here. Whether as CEO Chin from the previous life, or as Ethan Chin in this one, I've always been here. I froze for a moment. Then why did you say those things just now? Why did you belittle your present self like that? Ethan Chin's expression suddenly darkened. When I first remembered everything, I kept blaming myself. I blamed myself for being useless. I felt that the me of this stage was still just as useless as before. If I had remembered earlier, I would never have left in my final year of high school. Things almost repeated themselves. I was terrified. Ethan Chin closed his eyes, then looked at me again, his eyes rimmed with red. Only then did I notice the faint bloodshot lines in his eyes. He hadn't slept well this whole time. My heart stirred, but before I could say anything, he suddenly pulled me tightly into his arms. In my previous life, there were times I didn't want to remember the past. My family's arrangements suffocated me. I resisted, and that's why I was sent here. If it weren't for you. But at the stage when I felt most useless, in your eyes, the me back then was actually that amazing. His voice choked, yet his eyes curved into a smile as he stared at me. I had planned to abandon my former self. I thought I'd meet you with the most mature and powerful version of me from my previous life. But I really didn't expect, that my desk mate would like me that much. My face instantly flushed red. I pinched his cheek as he grinned foolishly, then turned my head away awkwardly. Why you? You heard wrong. You were the one who confessed to me first, so passionately. How could I possibly hear wrong? But why were you faster than me? I was planning to confess first. Well, that's fine too. Who told you that counted as a confession anyway? Ethan Chin pretended not to hear me and continued smiling stupidly. Suddenly, knock, knock, knock. The knock on the door was polite, yet urgent. Ethan Chin's smile paused. He suddenly pulled me tightly into his arms, cleared his throat softly. Come in. The door was pushed open immediately. A tall, unfamiliar man walked in. Behind him stood another man in a suit and tie. The first man showed no emotion, his posture rigid, clearly on official business. Young master. Chairman Chin has arrived. I felt his cold gaze sweep over me briefly. Chairman Chin requests to see you immediately. Chairman Chin, wasn't that Ethan Chin's grandfather? Why would he come here personally? I looked at Ethan Chin in worry, but was surprised to find that his face had already turned cold. There was no trace left of the gentle warmth from moments ago. He had switched back into the CEO Chin of his previous life. Ethan Chin gave a slight nod. I understand. You may leave. The man didn't move. The air in the room suddenly dropped to freezing point. Ethan Chin slightly lifted his chin and stared straight at the man. I'll go meet him right now. You may leave. The man's expression changed. He lowered his head in a respectful bow and turned to leave. I was just about to stand up when Ethan Chin held me back. Only after they had completely left the room did his gaze soften as he looked at me again. Suddenly, he smiled. He raised his hand and gently ruffled my hair. It's fine. Don't worry about me. I know how to deal with that old man. Wait for good news, alright, desk mate? After saying that, he pulled me toward him and planted a quick kiss on my cheek. Then he hurried out, as if running away. I stood there, stunned. It took a long time before I finally reached up to touch my cheek. covering my face as my thoughts spiraled. Before this, I had always thought I was older than Ethan Chin. After all, I had lived many more years than him. That was Lena Lu at 28, standing beside Ethan Chin at 16 or 17. But now, wasn't it that he had suddenly regained memories of his previous life, that in an instant, Ethan, the boy, had become CEO Chin? Had he leaped past me, bent down, and looked at me from above? How could this happen, overnight? The teenage Ethan Chin had suddenly grown up. He had grown up too fast. I hadn't even had time to process it. Elsewhere, Richard Chin, not yet 40, was raging with thunderous fury. The moment Ethan Chin stepped through the door, a thick stack of documents was flung straight at his head. Ethan Chin dodged swiftly. There was nothing surprising about it. He calmly walked forward, stopped in front of Richard Chin, and casually sat down opposite him. He didn't care at all about the shock in the other man's eyes. Resting his chin lazily on his hand, he looked at his father and smiled with mock satisfaction. "Long time no see, Dad." I didn't know what the father and son said to each other. But even from far away, as I hid in the corridor and peeked out, I could still hear the sound of a glass shattering and loud, furious shouting. From beginning to end, however, I never heard Ethan Chin raise his voice. Perhaps because his tone was too calm, it only made his father even angrier. An hour later, a middle-aged man I had never seen before walked out. He wasn't visibly furious, yet the authority and suppressed anger he carried were unmistakable. He left quickly with his assistant. The door to the room remained half open. I only caught a glimpse of Ethan Chin's back. After that, the remaining people filed in one by one. When the crowd finally dispersed, Ethan Chin was taken away, or rather, escorted away. I shrank back beside my mother. A few days earlier, my father had been taking care of her. Now that Ethan Chin wasn't here, I sat by her side. She talked with me for a while before falling asleep. I was just about to take a book and move elsewhere to turn on a light and study, when my phone suddenly rang. "Deskmate, I'm fine. Don't worry about me." It was a message from Ethan Chin. In the ancestral residence of the Chin family, Ethan Chin knelt before his grandparents. He lowered his head and accepted punishment without a word. His back was straight. He showed no sign of fatigue. His posture was respectful, yet beneath it lay quiet defiance. He listened to every threat and persuasion from his elders, but gave no response. Head lowered, lips pressed tight, he ignored every word. The elderly man seated at the head of the room looked at him and shook his head slightly, signaling Richard Chin to stop. With just that gesture, two people rushed forward and held Ethan Chin firmly in place. Though in truth, it was unnecessary. Ethan Chin gave a faint smile and did not resist at all. Richard Chin raised the rattan whip high in his hand and lashed it down hard. With a single strike, the fair, pampered back was instantly marked red. Richard Chin's anger had reached its peak. Even though this was his own son, he showed no mercy. Again and again, the whip fell. Ethan Chin's entire back flushed red. His face turned deathly pale. Cold sweat poured down his forehead. He clenched his teeth and said nothing. All the family rules and punishments were applied without restraint. Finally, Richard Chin threw the rattan whip to the ground. He stared coldly at the son who was still stubbornly enduring. "Now go back and do as arranged. The illness of that girl's mother, I'll have Assistant Jing monitor it. Money, medical resources, nothing will be lacking. I'll consider that you're still young and don't understand. This matter ends here." Ethan Chin swayed slightly. "I won't go." Mrs. Chin's heart tightened instantly. His pale face lifted as he repeated himself, "I want to stay. I won't go." That single sentence extinguished the last flicker of affection in Richard Chin's eyes. He raised his hand again, but Mrs. Chin rushed forward and clung to him, crying, "Ahi, stop hitting him. Look carefully, this is the child I nearly lost my life giving birth to. He's your son too. How can you bear to beat him like this?" Richard Chin hesitated. In the end, he lowered his hand. "Look at your mother. Can't you make your parents worry less?" Mrs. Chin knelt down, carefully avoiding the swollen wounds. Her eyes were full of pain. "Min Min, your father has already compromised so much. Be good. Listen to him. If you're really worried about that girl's family, we'll send people to watch over them. Don't keep confronting your father. You know he already has high blood pressure. Do you want to anger him to death?" Ethan Chin was silent for a long moment. Then he shook his head gently. "Dad. Even if you beat me to death today, I won't change my decision. Even if Lena Lu came to persuade me, I still wouldn't listen." Richard Chin was so furious that he laughed. "I see you're completely beyond saving. Your brain is full of nothing but love. The Chin group cannot be handed over to someone like you, someone who thinks only about love. If you like her that much, then don't stay in this family anymore. I'll choose someone more outstanding from the Chin family to inherit everything. You want love, don't you? Fine. Then don't even dream about inheriting the family legacy. Still won't change your mind? If you don't change today, then I'll sever our father-son relationship completely." Everyone thought those words would frighten Ethan, or at the very least, given his stubborn personality, so much like his father's, he would respond coldly with something like, "If you want to cut ties, then cut ties." Assistant Zhang pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, already certain that today would end in a complete rupture between father and son. Yet, in the suffocating silence, Ethan Chin suddenly let out a soft laugh. "Dad," he said calmly, "everything you're saying right now is because you're angry. You wouldn't destroy the Chin group just because of a moment of rage. You know better than anyone that no one else is more capable than the person you personally raised with such care." Richard Chin stiffened. His expression eased slightly, though his tone remained sharp. "Quite the mouth you've got. If you understand that, then you should understand this even more. This family has placed enormous expectations on you. Someone destined for great things shouldn't be bound by fleeting emotions. Look at what you're doing now." Ethan coughed lightly, his voice growing weaker. "I understand very well. The children of other families were all sent abroad to study. The next generation needs better education to keep up with the times, then return to help manage their family businesses. I behaved badly in the past. Honestly, sending me overseas only now is already too late. But because my temperament hadn't been tamed, everyone was afraid that if I went too early, I'd spiral even further without supervision. That logic isn't wrong." Richard Chin snorted coldly. "Not bad, you managed to think that through. But Dad," Ethan continued, pressing one hand to the floor as sweat poured down his face, his teeth clenched, "if we look at things from a future that's already been seen, staying is the wiser choice than leaving." Richard Chin turned back suspiciously. "It's 2002, Ethan said through the pain. This is the dawn of the information technology explosion. I can't leave now. Dad. Grandpa. Don't you want the Chin group to rise to an even higher level? I think our family should step into higher circles as well." In the end, it was old Chairman Chin who spoke. He ordered Ethan to stand, then frowned and led both father and son, 3 generations, into a private room. No one else in the Qin family knew what was said inside. They only knew that when dawn finally broke, the three men emerged together, each wearing a complicated expression, all except Ethan Qin. His face looked unusually light, almost relieved. The very next day, Chairman Qin and the old chairman, who had already retired, convened an emergency shareholders meeting. Ethan Qin was appointed CEO of the Internet Group's Research and Development Division. From that moment on, no one mentioned sending Ethan abroad to study again. After the meeting ended, his grandfather said only one sentence to him: "If what you said is true, then give it everything you have." Ethan immediately arranged for people to monitor the surgery, then began implementing drastic corporate reforms, changing company policies, recruitment standards, and promotion systems. He sent technical teams overseas to learn, and a series of transformation measures were launched at once. The year 2012 truly was an era of upheaval, from the popularization of smartphones, to the birth and mass production of multiple phone brands, to the development and operation of intelligent software. Everything unfolded one after another over the following decade. A week later, Ethan rushed back to reassure me, "Desk mate," his message read, "don't worry about me. Once the smartphone prototype passes the board review and goes into production, I'll finally have some free time." Ethan didn't hide anything from me. He told me that he had subtly hinted to his family about his rebirth, though in a very indirect way. It shifted their focus entirely toward the future of the Qin family. "Did they believe you?" I asked. "Rebirth sounds like a fairy tale. I don't even dare tell my parents. They're strict materialists. They'd never believe it." Ethan rubbed my head, smiling as if coaxing a child. "Of course they didn't believe me. I only analyzed and predicted the future. They couldn't deny that what I said could happen. Besides, they watched me grow up. With how strangely I've been acting lately, they've already started to suspect something." I asked worriedly, "So you won't have to leave anymore, right?" Ethan's hand paused on my head. He thought for a moment, then said, "Studying abroad is still necessary, to broaden connections. But not right now. At the very least, it'll wait until after you finish the college entrance exam. After that, we'll plan carefully. Once they see my capabilities, they'll eventually let go, just like in my previous life. No matter what, I'll definitely include you in my life plan. Whether they oppose it now doesn't matter. After enough time passes, they won't be able to control me anymore." The words "include you in my life plan" made my face burn. I turned away awkwardly. Seeing this, Ethan immediately pulled me into his arms. How should I put it? Ethan Qin, with the memories of a grown man, no longer played the shy games of youth. Every time I was alone with him, I became so tense that I didn't even know where to put my hands or feet. It was infuriating. The days when I could tease my desk mate, Ethan, were long gone. That image of a shy teenage boy, blushing, covering his neck, embarrassment creeping all the way up to his ears, had already been completely swallowed by Ethan Qin. Now, I was the one blushing. I was the one flustered. Everything had reversed. No, this wouldn't do. I struggled instinctively. "Ethan, you can't, desk mate," he interrupted softly. "This time, I can finally stay by your side. I'll stay with you for your entire life. This lifetime. I won't let anyone bully you ever again." After saying that, he buried his head into the hollow of my neck. Every word I had been about to say was swallowed by that tight embrace. Outside the window, the trees swayed gently in the breeze. The air was fresh and green, a lazy noon drifting between spring and summer. The college entrance exam was approaching. This lifetime story seemed to be moving toward a happy ending. Perhaps Ethan Sheen was my benefactor reborn, someone who saved me, and saved my parents as well. My mother had finally found a suitable heart donor. The surgery was extremely successful. The doctor said that after a period of recovery, she would be able to leave the hospital. Leaning against the hospital bed, my mother smiled and said, "If you think about it, it'll be right after little La finishes the college entrance exam, won't it?" Yes. Lately, I had been so busy worrying about my mom that it suddenly hit me. The art entrance exam had already passed. I heard that Dylan's son had done exceptionally well. Thinking of fragile-looking Nina Sue, I couldn't help feeling uneasy. I immediately called Ethan and asked him to keep an eye on the situation. This time, whose paper did Dylan's son switch? I asked. Nina Sue's. I'm afraid he already switched it. With her actual skill level, there's no way she could have performed that well. Wait, Ethan froze. You mean Nina Sue? The one in the art class? I nodded hurriedly. For some reason, Ethan suddenly laughed. Then she's finished. Who's finished? I asked. Ethan's smile turned sharp and cunning. Nina Sue's father is the municipal party secretary. Looks like principal's son didn't investigate her background carefully enough. After the exam results were released, Lucas Lynn secretly handed Nina Sue a mobile phone. That day, he had snuck into a corner and recorded the entire scene of the exam paper swap. Although the video quality wasn't high, it was clear enough to confirm that someone had tampered with her paper. Nina Sue looked at the phone, smiled, and said softly, "Thank you." Then she handed the phone to the department director sitting beside her. The next day, news exploded everywhere. Principal Victor's son had bribed exam invigilators to swap a candidate's art exam papers. According to multiple sources, Victor's son was dismissed from his position and placed under investigation. Dylan's son, due to cheating in the art exam, was banned from taking the exam by the Lu Sun Academy of Fine Arts for 3 years, and was simultaneously suspended from taking the National College Entrance Exam for 3 years as well. Nina Sue's father had clearly played no small role in all of this. They even came to our house personally to thank me once. Because of my early warning, Nina Sue had prepared in advance. She had gathered sufficient evidence of Victor's son's contact with the invigilators. In the end, both physical evidence and witnesses were complete. The father and son were completely brought down. Nina Sue hugged me tightly. The gentle, soft girl said sincerely, "Lena, you're a really good person." Ethan stood beside us, his expression dark, his eyes darting back and forth at her non-stop. "Lena?" Nina tilted her head. "What's wrong with Ethan? He seems like he doesn't like me very much. I just want to be close to little Lil." "Green tea, bitch." Nina Sue frowned slightly. "Green tea?" I froze. That term wouldn't become popular until the future. How could people from this time know what it meant? I quickly hugged Nina Sue and pretended to scold Ethan. "Don't say that. If Nina starts crying, what then?" Seizing the opportunity, Nina Sue collapsed into my arms, sobbing softly. She smelled sweet and soft, too adorable. Ethan widened his eyes, pointed at her, and his voice shot up in disbelief. "Weak? You call her weak? When she was little, Nina Sue once spun around and kicked me so hard I rolled on the ground. And you're calling her weak?" Hearing this, Nina Sue shot Ethan a sharp, icy glance. Ethan refused to back down. I stared in shock. So Dylan's son's broken arm. Was that Nina's doing? I heard he couldn't even lift his arm. Nina Sue calmly brushed her hair back. I said gently, A thief deserves to have his arm broken while committing the crime. Ethan raised an eyebrow and looked at me. On our way home from the Sioux family's thank you banquet, my dad sighed repeatedly. Good thing I didn't let you study art, he said. If Dylan's son had swapped your paper. He suddenly stopped mid-sentence. I calmly took his hand and shook my head. Dad, that day will never come. It will never happen. From the front seat, Ethan's voice rang out, rarely this serious. There will never be such a thing. As long as I'm here, no one can swap her paper. You little brat. My dad snapped. Who are you calling Dad? In my previous life, I didn't have many friends. After Nina Sue finished dealing with Dylan's son's matter, she began coming over to my house from time to time. Slowly, we grew closer. She sincerely praised my paintings. Little Lo, she said, you could actually try other styles of painting. My uncle's company is looking for someone to design character visuals. Why don't you give it a try after the college entrance exam? It sounded reasonable. I wanted to try drawing different things as well. The recent news truly filled me with joy. Dylan's son and Victor's son had been punished. My mother's condition was steadily improving. Good news from 2 lifetimes intertwined, filling my heart with happiness. And in this lively, hopeful atmosphere, we stepped into the college entrance exam. I sat in the examination hall, listening to the loudspeaker recite the rules for candidates. Suddenly, everything felt distant, as if wrapped in a hazy dream, a dream of a past life. The days of battling the Sun family felt as though they already belonged to another lifetime. Like drifting smoke, long since dispersed, exactly like a dream that had lasted far too long. The electronic voice rang out again, calmly announcing that candidates could begin. Inside the examination hall, pens moved rapidly across paper. Thousands of students, 12 years of studying by lamplight, grinding day after day. Today was the day that decided victory or defeat. Outside the window stretched an endless sky and a vast earth. Dawn and night alternated, extending without end. All things grew, then withered. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter rotated endlessly in this world. My life was never just these 10 years before my eyes. I had already walked through 10 years of darkness, and finally, I had seen the dawn. From this moment on, there would only be boundless light. At the award ceremony of the 25th Vanxie International Painting Competition, 2014, the final announcement echoed through the hall. The winner of the Gold Award is a newly graduated student from the finance department of Fudan University, the young painter Lena Lu. Sitting beneath the stage, Ethan Sheen looked up intently at Lena Lu as she spoke on stage. She was radiant, brilliant beyond words, the unquestionable center of everyone's gaze. Tears welled in his eyes. This time, she had finally received the glory she deserved. Moon in the Sky was a painting bound to me like flesh and blood. In Love in a Fallen City by Eileen Chong, there is a line, "The moon over the sea is the moon in the sky. The one before your eyes is the one in your heart." Some people live high above, some remain deep in the abyss. Some shine like the sun, some are nothing more than a piece of rusted iron. Each of us walks upon this earth, lifting our eyes toward the moon in the sky. Those who persist, who keep walking without stopping, will eventually become the moon that others must look up to. Finally, I want to thank one person. If not for him, there would be no Lena Lu of Toda, with parents safe, whole, and happy. Ethan Sheen, my desk mate, little Ethan. You are the dawn that saved my life. The stage. Lights swept down toward Ethan Sheen in the audience. The camera zoomed in so closely that one could clearly see the young man's ears burning red. That passionate declaration of love, spoken before countless people, was ultimately swallowed by the roaring crowd and thunderous applause. Bright moon over the open sea, at the edge of the horizon, together with the moonlight. End of the story. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to like and subscribe to Love Stories with Lisa for more stories. Thank you so much.